Epic truth, epic share. Never ever articulated in absolute real perspective why Donald J. Trump and the tariff regimes he has in place exist, where they're targeted to, the truth of it. This will explain equalization. It will explain great disparity across Canada. The have provinces, the have not. When in fact, the wealth in all provinces, especially the biggest ones, are unimaginable, but not for any Canadians, let alone the Canadian government. What I've learned today in northern Quebec, as I started visually seeing from my own eyes and living this northern Quebec, the equivalent of the closest representation visually in design and reality of that of the entirety of the United States of America. What do I mean? When you come up to northern Quebec after an expanse of wilderness known very well throughout the western provinces, all across Canada, in fact, and then to hit this pocket of an old Canada still intact, laid out, designed just like the 50 states of the Union. I've traveled so many of them, and nothing in Canada looks anything like that state design, except for what I've discovered on this trip for a somewhat remote job site in northern Quebec. And I walk out last night into this whole new world, foreign to me as a Canadian, never seen anywhere in Canada, not in its infrastructure, its design. The only place I've ever seen this kind of infrastructure and design is when I tour the United States of America. Towns, villages, little cities, every 10 to 15 minutes. Vast stretches of them, just like the United States of America. Spread out all over, but yet tightly knitted together, just like the United States. I can't find that anywhere in Canada. Nowhere. I've been all through entirely Ontario, never seen any of it. You hit that wilderness, that's all you get. But not Quebec. Quebec's got an old world Quebec, where unlike the laws of the English Society Canada, the British designed Canada that followed with 1867 and largely adopted from Ontario, where you will densify everybody in one key area. You will have vast expanses between such areas and a limited amount of space, and vast regions of provinces left uninhabited, unattainable for anybody, reserved only for corporate interests, corporate leases. So I thought, until I entered this Quebecois world of northern Quebec, unlike anything else in Canada, where not true. Now, folks, I basically took the hard, treacherous path to this job, doing the northern reaches of Ontario and then the northern reaches of Quebec, where I was blown away. Never seen anything like it in Canada. Never seen such vast development where you can go RVing, dirt biking, quadding, hospital in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, so that all the Quebecois from all over the province can enjoy the wilderness, RV, dirt bike, and I mean separate tracks, sand laid out to go through all these trails, unlike nowhere else in Canada. And I've done all of Canada, everybody. I took for granted the northern Quebec as I treated it as it must be, just like the rest of Canada, I was wrong. It's entirely what I would expect to find, and I did find, and I know to be true in the United States of America. I want to talk about the have-not province, Canada. This maybe is those people who call corporate Canada. Maybe. There are UK treaties over Canada in the old pre-Canada that exists today. These are treaties the United States accepted. These are the French components. I don't speak French. I know about the language of laws in French and Latin. I know all about it. I get that. I don't speak it. I don't read it. I don't understand it. But this is where these northern Quebecois, who understand it very well, large source of Quebec separatism. This is for all Anglophones, as it was taught to me today here by a born-bred, multi-generational Quebecois. Today, brought up on Google, we went through a bunch, and I taught a bunch to these Quebecois, and they taught a bunch to me. Unreal. Boom! Mind exploded. That there exists these treaties and this French and Latin of the British North America imposed on us today. Not most of Anglophone Canada, except that entirely of that British Columbia, 90% of it. Vast swaths of it have treaties in place where the land belongs to foreign corporations. Yes, lots of the UK, and then treaties UK made with other empires, and their corporations literally, under those treaties, own the land, the water, the rights to, and pay nothing. All of these areas that was mapped out, lined up to me, is now I visually saw this northern Quebec that keeps going, folks. And for all you Western Canadians, and I'm one of them, so understand where I'm at is the end of civilization in northern Quebec, just at the precipice of the 49th parallel, where all of our western provinces start. Everything in absolutely all numbered treaty Indian lands has no corporations foreign under treaty holding rights to any of the resources, ownership and rights to the water or the land, lakes, rivers, on and on. So we find this entirely in small postage stamp Manitoba of the old world. Yes, going into a Great Lake. We find this throughout entirely BC. And folks, when I say this, start looking at Trump's targeted tariffs. Steel, aluminum, copper, wood. Start looking at what's old Canada under old treaties that has all Canadian subjects, no matter where you exist in Canada, Atlantic Canadians who you must pay for what the government pays out literally to foreign entities who get it all for free. No first person is paid for that. No Canadian subject is paid for that. Absolutely, your government doesn't get paid for that. In comes equalization, in comes everything else from what are numbered treaty lands. You all must pay for the shortfall of the corporate entities who don't pay for anything because under treaty they own it from the old world. In all of those lands and all of those industries, I'm in one right now, seeing it, living it. Donald J. Trump is targeting all of those old world lands where you Canadians must subsidize the vast wealth generation of all these multi-global corporations. Lots herald from the United Kingdom, but there are many others. Absolutely. I saw the signs. I saw the ownership. I see the deed of title. Arabian countries from the Middle East, China, under UK treaties with those countries as well too, giving up these vast areas of resources, land, and water rights of old pre-Canada, British North America, to all of these companies that all of you Canadians must subsidize. And the only place you can get that money is from corporations and Canadians in lands that are of the Canadian government. That's why you pay transfers. That's why you pay equalization, to make up for what these massive globalists get to have in title and take out of Canada for literally nothing. Because under treaty, they own it. A corporation acting exactly like the Hudson Bay Company in laws that are supposedly no longer existent, but yet the Canadian government and all provincial governments are bound to. So this is entirely all of upper, lower Canada, small postage stamp Manitoba and its region and areas, and absolutely almost all of BC. Now I ask everybody, go grab all the tariffs imposed by Donald J. Trump and which industries where in Canada. And guess what your answer is? Taught to me in less than 7 minutes by a mass 16 generational Quebecois with a good handle on English. To put it in perspective, he has the same Jean Chrétien accent, except for a greater handle on English. And he articulated that. We went online. And then I showed him the 49th parallel, and I go, look, I just drove it, man. All of upper and lower Canada, that treacherous. He goes, you went that way, man? That's treacherous. I said, yeah, I did the entire border. I've seen you as you all are. And I'm telling you, I've done this right across Canada always. This was my first time in northern Quebec. And I think the last time when I touched on that with Ontario, I gave up because I thought, oh, well, I'm not going to go any farther. I made an ass out of me and you, I assumed that Quebec would be no different than the rest of Canada. Boy, this trip proved I was very, very wrong. And to see a lake entirely owned, a great-sized lake entirely owned by a corporation, and have all the rights to it, meaning all the water and resources, and then to go through Donald J. Trump's tariffs and realize this truth exists in all of old Canada, that supposedly we're free from the UK rule, we're free from all that. We're not free from the corporate granted titles on those old systems. That's what Donald J. Trump is destroying, because Canadians, you are subsidizing this old world foreign corporate interests who have title in your country to your lands when that British Empire no longer exists. The French Empire hasn't existed forever. Why are we honoring for foreign corporate interests, mass of which are headquartered in the United Kingdom? Why do we grant them title over those lands? We run the United States down, who absolutely pays the regime schedules of royalties to you, the Canadian people, in your numbered lands, but yet they have no access at all to any of old Canada lands, because those lands, resources, and title belongs to foreign corporations, not foreign governments, but loyal to those governments established in an evil old world that is not to exist worldwide since 1945 under the UN Charter and the allies of World War II. So folks, Donald J. Trump is literally not a king. He's going to be the slayer of kings. And his funny posts and everything else, Quebecois understand this. The northern Quebecois, which has that independence way more than anybody else, and it's all on protecting their culture and language and ending this kind of evil that they've always been fighting to end just in Quebec, and why they want independence articulated to me very easily in 7 minutes time, almost like it was waiting for me to explain this. I want all Anglophones to understand this. This video is massive, deadly accurate, and it shows clearly that the United States of America does not want to compete against Canadians who are subsidizing foreign interests, giving them a free rein to compete against America by subsidizing all of their activities and giving them free rein over your land, resources, and water, which is 100% deadly against every single one of the 50 states of the Union. You can't find one who doesn't codify a state constitution against these exact things. It's 100% a war on America, and America's looking at it. You bitch about our oil, discounts, all this, but you have these vast resources in these old Canada areas that USA's locked out of, and Canadians work in all the other industries America participates in, supports in. You take all that American wealth generation and money and investment they use, and then you subsidize foreign interests who take away your land, water, and resources and leave literally vast provinces like Quebec broke. Others broke. Manitoba's a have-not. BC's largely a have-not. Then they go to corruption with foreign entities and governments like China, like Southeast Asia, Middle East. Is this where you want to go, Canadians? To protect your crown pigs at the trough and foreign entities and corporate interests who hold old titles to your lands when that's not this country or the international rules-based order. Jean Chrétien got on a pulpit and said Donald J. Trump doesn't follow rule of law. No. It's Jean Chrétien and every prime minister Canada's ever had who's never followed international law, at least since 1945. They are the criminals. And Canadians, all your premiers, as I articulated that very well, as much as a gift to Quebecois in this northern Quebec, this different universe that very much looks like the United States of America. You ever go through these 800 miles of northern Quebec? This is going basically the Quebec border up about 675 kilometers and then onward. And when I say north, again, this is the border, skimming the border of the 49th parallel, where all of that above there has all the same rules all the western provinces have. And that's why Ontario and Quebec don't develop it, because they're stuck there. They're stuck. They're not allowed to, because all these corporate interests keep them where they're at. Isn't that unreal, unbelievable? All attached to the British Empire, Hudson Bay, and USA says, and all allies and the entire United Nations says, that's illegal. That infringes on the sovereignty of a country. Are we really a country, or are we the same old lie we've always been? And the truth is, we're the same old lie we've always been. You want to end equalization? You best get on supporting Donald J. Trump and all his tariffs, because that's what he's doing. He's not only ending equalization, he's ending those foreign interests and those baloney titles over vast sums of Canada, where most of the Canadian population, over 70%, reside in these slave areas. That's the truth. This is the most important video to date I've made since the 51st state and that conversion, December of 2024. Massive, important Benjamin Ebley and Jonathan Bahai. It's shocking, unbelievable, unreal. And everyone needs to know. Every Anglophone in Canada needs to know this Quebecois truth. God bless everybody. Share. Get it out there. Tariffs aren't going anywhere, and in these industries, they're probably going to expand at the rate of Canadian subsidy. And as the government moves to borrow, Mark Carney, borrow and cement these corporate interests foreign, what do you think Donald J. Trump's going to do with tariffs? Do you see the direction I'm pointing? They're just going to go up with the rate of rape of the Canadian subjects and First Peoples. At the rate Mark Carney rapes you by borrowing and debt loading you, Donald J. Trump's going to continue to raise the tariffs. It's for America, because honestly, this vast abuse of all Canadians and First Peoples, the subjects of Canada and the First Peoples defined under the Indian Act as savages, the higher Mark Carney raises the abuse level and the liquidation, the higher these tariffs are going to go until someone breaks. And it's not going to be the United States. It's going to be Canada, and Canada's evil. This is where your politicians are driving all their money, and why they don't want provincial constitutions, and the idea of property rights will never happen in Canada. They should in a place like Alberta. They should in Saskatchewan. Not possible in BC under these treaties. Not for 90% of it. Not for 90% of it. You have a wall of those over 5 million people who will vote deadly against Alberta and Saskatchewan through the propaganda of the entire British government, that too, but the BC provincial government. You will get the same thing from Manitoba. You'll absolutely get it entirely from Ontario. You'll get it entirely from Quebec. As when we go down south, you know the density. You have Quebec City, Montreal, and all those major cities. The vast majority who are lock, stock, and barrel into it have no idea. It's only this isolated northern Quebec, which is a substantial amount of people. I'm surprised. And it's the most American in Canada, at least visually and by thought and thinking, critical thinking skill. I'm just shocked. And I'm glad I took this job and I did this journey. You won't get, like I said, 70% of the population's trapped in it, owned by these corporate foreign interests under those UK treaties that apparently overrule Canada. And all your crummy politicians who are all paid off. So they're going to keep stealing and thieving, and they'll die before they give that up or flee. So under the threat of death, they would flee with their vast sums of money. Folks, share. Get this truth out there. You need to know. God bless. Bye now.